Shalom, I'm Tamar. Welcome to my channel where I chat about Torah, and I also host a Torah story time for children. So usually if you see me talking, I want to chat about Torah. So welcome again. Shalom, other Torah students, Torah scholars. Let's chat today about who controls the divorce get when there is a divorce in the community. Because I think this is a very interesting topic which dives into the language of Deuteronomy 24. A lot of times that passage is taken and then there's a leap into an assumption that a man can unilaterally scribble on a piece of paper that he's divorcing his wife and then it's done and that's all there is to it, or he can withhold a get if she wants to leave because she has a just reason for divorce under the rules of Torah. There is an interesting factor that is often overlooked, and that is that passage starts with the Hebrew word ki, which can be translated as if or when. So that has to be noted. This is not a mandate. It's not condoning his behavior. It's saying in this situation, this is how this needs to be handled. So the man is giving her a divorce get. We don't know if he just wrote on a piece of paper himself, okay? But in this situation, it's describing that if she leaves and remarries, the Most High is still going to recognize that first covenant as dissolved, okay? So she can't go back to him if the second husband passes away or also divorces her. There's some kind of split for a reason. And I'm going to challenge this idea that a man can just write on a piece of paper that the marriage is over and yada, yada, yada. That's solid. That is very destructive for a community because it's commanded in the Torah that when there is a dispute against two people within the community, there needs to be a trial before judges. And that is smart to apply when it comes to divorces, because then we can, as a community, recognize those divorces just as we recognize marriages as a community, and that's very important because that prevents adultery. So in the Torah, it says when there's, this is common knowledge, I don't need to reference the verse exactly, but disputes should go before judges. It needs to know, this needs to happen in divorces so people know what happened between two parties. A man or the woman in their marriage cannot just make a claim against their spouse as heavy as divorce without it being investigated thoroughly with witnesses, with facts, and with judges going into what happened to decide whether or not there is a legitimate reason for a divorce. And this, like I said before, protects the community against adultery. It's very smart to handle it this way. Also in Deuteronomy 16:18 through 20, we are commanded to appoint judges, male and female judges. Okay, the Hebrew word there for judges, shofatim, is third person plural, masculine. And in many languages, just as the English word they means women and men as well, the same is true for judges. There are to be judges that are women with wisdom and men with wisdom all over the community who can hear disputes. That's why nobody thought anything of Deborah being a judge. It's written, she said out of her own mouth, that when the rulers ceased, she arose as a matriarch in Israel. So what rulers? Because they had just gotten into the land. She was one of the first judges. So it's talking about the rulers of the nations. It's not Israelite rulers. There had been no king up to that point. They're freshly into the Canaanite territory. So Deborah's a judge. Nobody thought anything of it. So it takes the wisdom of men and women to rule in divorce cases and to balance it between genders so that any case that comes before the judges, male and female marriages, it's unbiased. It's a great approach. Now, you don't have to take my word only for it, okay? There's lots of interpretations of Torah. I know that. I have my opinion. Somebody else might have their opinion. But we know that the Messiah came to give us the perfect interpretation of Torah. And if you look at Matthew 19:8, it says, that Moses allowed them to divorce their wives. Okay, so the Pharisees come to him, they question him, what is a legitimate divorce under Torah? They're proposing a shaliah to him. They're midrashing, they're debating. And he recalls from ancient days that Moses, who was the judge of the time, allowed them to divorce their wife. Okay, so there's no legitimate divorce unless a judge hears the case. So a man or woman cannot just decide that they're divorced and then just walk off. Unless, I would say, there's no judges in office at the time. Okay, but we do have a Sanhedrin now, and that's in Israel. And we also have people within Messianic and Hebrew roots who are establishing judging ministries, myself being one. But I don't want to make this about me. I want to talk about Matthew 19:8 and Matthew 23:1 through 3. I want to point out what is said in Matthew 23, okay, because this settles whether or not we still have to go to a judge within our religious community to absolve a marriage. The secular courts have control over financial matters, economic matters, matters that you're bound to legally when you live among the nations. Okay, but the religious courts are the ones that can dissolve the spiritual ties, and this is good because this solves the problem of the aguna, which is the most famous type of situation in which a man wants to try to withhold a divorce get, but he can't do that. If the woman goes to the judges and presents her case, she can be freed. A man cannot just unilaterally say, I'm not going to give you a divorce get, so sad, too bad. That kind of prisoner mentality of women cannot be justified under the Torah, and vice versa. You know, sometimes women do this to men. So, you know, I'm not being biased towards either gender, but just highlighting that judges can absolve a person who has a legitimate reason to be freed under the rules of the Torah. So in Matthew 23, it says, Then Yahushua spoke to the crowd and his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sit down on Moses' seat. Moses' seat is the seat of judgment, judges. Then all things, whatever they tell you to keep, keep and do. But do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. Okay, so Messiah is saying that we're still bound to the Sanhedrin in Israel. But when they're hypocritical, we may reject their authority. And the entire chapter of Matthew 23 is a buildup of why the Messiah rejects the Sanhedrin of his day. Anybody has a right to reject somebody's authority if they believe that that authority is not following Torah, if they see hypocrisy, if they see something wrong and it's actually good because you share in the sins of whatever authority figure that you bind yourself to. So I want to emphasize again that the Messiah showed that we have to listen to the judges that are in authority. And we also have the option of seeking out their help to obtain a divorce get when somebody is trying to be manipulative and hold us trapped. We have that option. So I want to emphasize the importance of this process because this prevents adultery in the community. And even more importantly, it prevents false accusations. There's a lot of people who will say, you're an adulterer, you're an adulterer, they're an adulterer, adulterer, not good to say that fast. You're an adulteress, etc., etc., etc. But if they haven't done a fair trial against that person with judges and witnesses, who are they to say? Nobody has a right to accuse anybody of being an adulterer or an adulteress unless there has been a fair hearing and that person has submitted to the services of that judge. think on that. And drop your comments if you would like to talk about this issue more. It's a very important issue, one that's often overlooked in Messianic and Hebrew roots community. The Orthodox community, they got this down. They've got judges in place. They take it very seriously. They have a Sanhedrin. And yeah, thanks for listening.